Any moment where an opposition disconnects from the man next to them, forget about it. You're staring down the barrel of a substantial loss. The All Blacks did well to keep these games to only 30 odd points. It'd be forgivable if the All Blacks attack was actually up to anything, but instead it was so easily smothered by Ireland. In the first test, New Zealand deployed one really interesting innovation where they made the most of Aaron Smith's insanely accurate passing ability by doing this, repeatedly hitting the outside man, using a structure built for playing off 10, but played off 9 instead, just using the fact Smith can do that. It's something I went into detail on when covering the first test. You can go and look at that if you want, as it led to 3 of the All Blacks' 5 tries in that game. But I also said at the time, it's something I reckon Andy Barrett can work out a way to shut down in 7 days, and, well, here, New Zealand take it off kick return and Smith immediately hits the outside man, which allows Retallick to cross the game line, but instead of contesting the breakdown as usual, O'Malley and Burns spread out. They just leave it. It means there's no room for New Zealand to run this, so Ringrose can shoot up, and suddenly Geordie Barrett has no option for taking himself, opposite a gaggle of forwards. And once again, Ireland stand for breakdown, meaning they can spread thin. So, when Smith goes to miss ball again, it's easy for Van der Fleer. Hitting the outside man means Retallick can only carry himself or hit Barrett, who in turn only has his Funhouse mirror clone as an option. It's so predictable Van der Fleer can cover all 3 himself. And after one more phase, Smith goes for it again. But again, Van der Fleer is waiting opposite. The All Blacks give up, no momentum made, they just kick it away. For a tactic so devastating in the first test, Ireland dismantled it with such, they just didn't even really, they needed just such ease, so easily. By being more selective of which breakdowns they hit than in the first test or the Six Nations, Ireland were able to get Josh Van der Fleer into position to kill their momentum. And even when Van der Fleer wasn't there, check the way Tide Burn here, sees it coming and lines up the third man to take the intercept. It's so simple but desperately effective. And then, even when most exasperated, even with the 10 forced to fill in this channel, which should be a game line success for the All Blacks, you see why they're going for it here, Ireland are so well drilled and smart enough that Joey Carberry is flying in to make the same read that Van der Fleer and Burn were, repeating the trick. It all left the All Black attack mostly toothless, Ireland wrapping up their world-class players. Last year we saw just how deadly the likes of Will Jordan can be in broken field scenarios, running on counter-attack, yet Ireland for 3 games now just gave him no space whatsoever. Both sides' kicking tactics were extremely similar in this series, averaging 30.6 and 30.8 metres per kick, but Ireland just chased better. Here the All Blacks sent the kick, but the only chaser, Geordie Barrett, is nowhere near where the kick is going to land and has to cut in, meaning Keenan can take the ball without any pressure on it. Ireland just play it out and Ringrose can pin them back to outside their own 22. But Ireland, no such bullshit. The chase is always perfect and the forwards tend to then swarm, meaning there's no way out for the Barretts or Jordans of the world. And so, it's telling the only real moment of Jordan being properly dangerous all series came in an entirely different scenario. Will Jordan starts here on the right wing, but as the kick comes in, he sniffs out that there may be a chance later on. With this fumble adjusting the defensive picture, Byrne here had only Hansen and Furlong outside him, and King Potato understandably calls a backup. So Byrne and Keenan both are blind, kinda making the opposite error to George Bauer and working too hard. Yet there should be support there, because Byrne steps out assuming Caelan Doris will fill this gap. But this phenomenal bit of shithousery by Cody Taylor, so far off the ball the referee won't see it's behind his back, means no Irishman can fill the hole. And Artie Surveyor's body language then is perfect. He never once looks at the gap or Jordan inside him, signalling instead he's going to hit Tupou Vaa'i on his tip-on line. And Jordan's timing then also excellent, remaining hidden from the Irish defence until the last second, or communicating clearly with Surveyor so he knows exactly what he's going to do. Jordan breaks the line, and from here, everything else is just bullshit. It's just kind of, Will Jordan is bullshit, the finish is bullshit, this whole thing is just a little bit daft. It's a moment of isolated brilliance that's kind of all New Zealand are able to conjure at the minute. It's all they have. Where Ireland put in an incredible team performance, all New Zealand had in reply was a few isolated moments of magic from Artie Surveyor, Will Jordan, and, in that third test, frankly, quite exceptional performance by Beauden Barrett, who, on the quiet, put in one of the best displays from a 10 you'll ever see in a team being dominated. Legendary Welsh 10 Barry John once said the best way to get the most out of an attack, if you're playing 10 in a shy team, is attacking kicks, because anyone of any skill level, no matter how bad, can chase and dive on a ball. And boy, did Beauden need to rely on that on Saturday, because the poor lad was getting absolutely nothing from the players around him. This kick for Jordan to chase is phenomenal. It's so good it almost turns a terrible attack where the defence is on top into a try. And this additional kicking helped limit Ireland and open up space that, none of his teammates could do anything with. This is a superb example of the kind of thing he was doing all game, particularly the first 60 minutes. With Rieko Ioane offering him no real option here, Barrett sends a brilliant kick over Hansen's head. It bounces, but this is only important because it gives Beauden the time he needs to get into the backfield, because he knows exactly the reply Hansen is about to make. He stood perfectly where Hansen hits it and regathers it himself, and suddenly has 20 metres to run into, but none of the players around him help him out. Geordie stands back shouting at him like their mums just called them in for tea, and none of the backs go with him. None of the forwards are attempting blocks to kind of prevent the Irish chase getting to him, to open any gaps. This kick and the anticipation of what's coming next is tantamount to Barrett making a 15-metre break, which everyone would fawn over. He's just made 20 metres for the All Blacks here, quite easily, as well as disorganising the defensive line. But what happened next is like all of his teammates just refusing him any kind of support as he makes it. I can't help but feel for Bodie, the only player who seemed to see the limits in what the All Blacks were running and was using his individual talents to stretch the structures and try and make more of them when, if ran as Foster and Moore wanted them to go, they resulted in situations like this, running a super predictable play the All Blacks have been running for about 4 years now. And it's so easy for Henshaw to just shut down and smash him. But if we're going to talk individual performances, well, I might as well just read off the Irish team sheet. But instead, I suppose, let's do a speed round of hyperpraise. Ty Burn is a weapon of genius and incredibly athletic octopus, all rolled into one blaringly bright scrum cap. Look at the way he sneaks around the Kiwi forwards to collapse small and win out of the turnover. His ridiculous tentacles are such jackal threats, stealing All Black ball like his Bundyaki spying a lady with some chicken. His limbs and stats are so equally absurd, he's the only guy in the world who I reckon could probably jackal himself. Peter O'Mahony, returning to the site of his career's 2 lowest ebbs, might be tough for some players, but for Peter O'Mahony, a man whose core strength comes not from training in the gym, but the sheer number of chips carried on his shoulders, it just makes him stronger. Somehow, the world's most Irish-looking man has put together possibly the best 380 minutes of his career back-to-back, and in games that constitute an Everest. He's been unbelievable this last month. There are those who seem convinced that I have some sort of anti-Irish bias, right? But how could I ever be biased against a team with this guy on it? And likewise, whilst as a Wales fan spent last month shouting against the Springboks, one South African I'll never tire of seeing is Josh van der Fleet. He's just relentless, the kind of player who is massive, yet somehow more than runs his weight, hits harder than you'd expect, and is harder to clear out than Pete would be, and yet also showed it well for his try to kickstart the third test. Now, we're used to seeing hefty locks propel the team's ball forwards after they've secured the lineup, but Ireland take this to another level. As James Ryan descends to terra firma, lifter Tyke Byrne turns his back into the gap in the line-out. This may not look like much, but he essentially just made these two players completely redundant in New Zealand's counter-shove by forcing them onto the outside and splintering them off. Ioane gives up and leaves the ball. Byrne finds a new target, as who should appear in front of him but Sam Wylock and Brodie Retallick, who I think he's probably heard of. Byrne shifts his focus from pushing them all to pulling Retallick and Whitelock, two of the strongest maul defenders on the planet, out the game. Byrne's octolimbs gangle the pair from the maul, granting Ireland the momentum for Joburg's finest to flop over. Jerk was Sexlon. He looks done. Spent for about the 17th time a year ago, but his form this tour has convinced me that I'm going to be stuck coming up with stupid nicknames for this dingbat forever. He's never going to stop, and I'm never going to get to rest. And then we have Hugo Keenan. After the first kind of dip of form in his career at the tail end of the domestic season, first test, man alive has Keenan responded. He was possibly man of the match for me on Saturday. His high ball work, cover, angles of running, so intelligent, and his try so well taken. After this international maul doesn't go anywhere, Ireland look wider. They play out the back twice, first to Sexton, then to Hansen. Now, with the All Blacks defence being dog shit, it doesn't take much for the Green Boys to find their entire back three attacking against just two, Jordan and Ioane, who both sit slightly too tight, allowing Lowe to burst down the left flank. Ireland play a phase in field, and as things reset, Gibson Park looks up 3 times to check the blindside, and who should see? Exactly the 2 same players who got caught short 1 minute ago. But here's the thing, right? The ball is slow, and so New Zealand do have a chance to fill this out and cover the space. Except, as Nepola Lala begins to fill in as he fills over here, your friend of mine, George Bauer, specifically tells Laulala not to help him cover this side. Let's have a look at how that went, right? As soon as the ball's available, Gibson Park plays it away. And who should he find that side once again but the entire Irish back three? Hansen's timing on this pass is brilliant, and Hugo Keenan's line is gorgeous. He doesn't just want the ball, he wants to hold Jordan for a second, knowing that's all Lowe will need to break away. He's flat enough that he's still a threat, but deep enough that Hansen can thread the pass across him. It's beautiful by Keenan, who just feels this whole thing out in his head. As soon as the ball leaves Hansen's hands, he's sprinting into the space in front of him, trusting Lowe will make the break, knowing all he has to do is beat the All Black cover to the space. And, when you know it, he does it, he gets his reward in the form of 5 points to his name and a healthy extension to Ireland's lead. If Bauer, however, shuffles out and allows Lala to take a spot, both backs can also shuffle and allow them to cover Low. As it is, the Irish back three can execute this overlap perfectly, with Keenan just being absolutely phenomenal here. Ireland are a team constantly evolving. They've got better every single campaign under Andy Farrell, and that's not because they've changed things, but because they've simply learned what they're doing better and added new components to the game, added new tweaks, new plays, new structures, ideas. They're hugely, hugely satisfying to watch and feel like they're truly pushing the game forwards. The All Blacks, on the other hand, are on the complete opposite trajectory. Actually, they're not really on a trajectory. They're not getting worse. They're just standing exactly still. Every other team in the top 10 has improved notably in the last 3 years, even the ones who are now worse results-wise than they were 3 years ago. The 2022 All Blacks are exactly the same as the 2019 All Blacks, but they're playing teams with 3 further years of innovation, ideas, alterations to their approaches, and indeed, the only innovation we've seen from the All Blacks since was the dynamic new off-9 game plan in the first test, which A, was figured out in 1 week, and B, was implemented during the 1 week where Joe Schmidt took over for Ian Foster when he was unavailable. Just whisper that. Maybe Foster's holding stuff back for the World Cup like we know Eddie Jones is. Or maybe he's just far, far out of his depth. There's only one way we can possibly answer that question. We can possibly know for certain, but that's going to take 18 months to find out. And it might be a risk too far for New Zealand rugby. And whilst we could go into the World Cup implications for Ireland, I don't think that's a task for today. No matter how shoddy the All Blacks side, this was still unprecedented territories. They're still the bloody All Blacks. And so it required a team who were ruthless, brutal, and oh so committed. Endlessly heartfelt and ever impassioned. What we've seen these last 2 weeks will be remembered for a very, very long time to come, and suggests, to me, international rugby is in very, very rude health. And so the All Blacks. So thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. There's more on the Wales games. There's the first test from England Australia. There's one on the first test as well where New Zealand won, if you can remember back when that used to happen. There's loads more around the channel. I'm going to look at USA Chile next. That's the next one kind of on the docket, as it were. And I will see you very soon for plenty more rugby.
Well, it's just never